Welcome to Breaking Ties, a new you after divorce. This is your go-to source for practical advice and support for when the divorce process has finished. Join us each weekday for a quick chat where we'll cover a variety of topics related to post-divorce. Together, we'll explore the emotional, financial, and legal aspects of life after divorce and help you find the best path forward for you and your family. Here's your host and Certified Divorce Financial Analyst professional, Mike Fulkerson.
Hello and welcome to the Breaking Ties interview series. This is where we talk with professionals in the divorce space who assist others, really getting through the divorce process and answer many of the questions that you might have. I'm your host, Mike Fulkerson, financial advisor and certified divorce financial analyst professional. And with me today is Chris Lunardini. Chris is a divorce attorney with SPYRATOSDAVIS. I'm going to have that trouble all week here in Lisle, Illinois. So we are going to get some fantastic information straight from the source. I'm going to be the first to welcome you to the podcast, Chris.
Thanks for having me, Mike. I greatly appreciate it. It's great to be here and glad to be able to help people out.
Yeah, that's great. No, we appreciate your time as well. And so when we look at being a guest on the show for the first time, one of the things that I always like to do is have you share a little bit about yourself.
Sure, absolutely. So I've been practicing law for 24 years now. Our office, we have two offices, one in Lisle and another one in Chicago. I practice all over the Chicago area and the Chicago suburbs. My primary counties are DuPage, Kendall, Kane, Will County, Cook County, do some Lake County and some of the others as well. But so we handle areas all around the Chicago area. I've been practicing, as I said, for 24 years. Most of my work is divorce work. So I do divorce, custody disputes, visitation disputes, adoptions, prenuptial agreements, and anything else that falls within family law.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. You cover it all. It sounds like for all, all intents and purposes right there. So, and, as you and I know, there's, many different pieces of the divorce process. And throughout the course of this week, we're going to go through a number of those and get your feel on those.
Absolutely. That'd be great.
Yeah. So I think for our listeners and viewers, probably the best place to start is kind of just to get your definition of what do you consider a traditional divorce process to be?
Traditional divorce is oftentimes when you get two parties, they may own single family residence. They have a couple of children, minors under the age of 18, and they have issues. They may or may not be really highly contested, but they have not yet reached an agreement on those issues. And that's most typical what you'll see in the divorce situation.
All right. Yeah. It's a great example you gave there on all, kind of like the family structure, if you will, because, I'm being divorced myself. I fit that same category. We had the house, the two kids, and the dog, kind of situation.
Right.
So it's one of those things where, it's sad. You don't like to see all that stuff, but at the same time, it is what it is from a situational standpoint.
Absolutely. And I think the biggest thing is they don't have an agreement yet. And that's most often what you see. And most divorces get finished by a settlement agreement. Over 90% of them get resolved through agreement, but it takes some time to get there. And again, they may not be, highly contested. It may not be a case where it's litigated for years, but it's a situation where you got to work through some of the issues and just reach a settlement and an agreement on them.
Right, exactly. There's a lot of negotiation that can go on just, for things that they want to split up. Now, when we look at the beginning of the process, we're often looking for a divorce attorney for a lot of reasons for many of our listeners and stuff. So when someone comes in to interview a divorce attorney, is there some keys they should be looking for? And then I think what's interesting is your take on being the attorney. What are you looking for from a new client?
Sure. So I think from the client's perspective, what they should be looking for, first of all, you want an attorney who is experienced and you think has practiced in not only the area, but in the county where you're going to be filing for divorce. I think that's helpful. Most attorneys, if they practice in accounting, have a lot of experience there. It's not that they're going to get favorable consideration by the judge, but they know how the process works. They know how the judges work. They know what the ins and outs of the judges' courtrooms are, so they can help move the case quicker. I think one of the biggest thing you should look for, or anybody should look for when looking for an attorney, is an attorney they can talk to, someone they can feel comfortable with, someone they feel that they can communicate with. Most divorce attorneys, they're going to have a good understanding of the law. You're going to have, of course, good attorneys and some okay attorneys and some great attorneys, run the whole gamut. But I think the biggest defining issue for most clients is they can talk to the attorney. Most attorneys are going to do a good job for you, and they're going to want to try and do a good job for you. But whether you can communicate with them and whether you feel like they do a good job communicating with you is going to be a big deal, because there's a lot of back and forth in a divorce relationship with a client. So I think that's the biggest thing to look for. And then they should look for somebody that can fit within their budget. Do not be afraid to talk about the money issue. It is an expensive endeavor to do a divorce. Even if it's an agreed divorce, it is still an expense you're going to have to put aside. You want to know if this is an attorney that's going to be able to work with you, that's going to have different types of payment arrangements that you meet your budget, or if they only have a couple of options. That way you know what you're getting into, and you know what you're going to be able to afford, and if this is someone that will work for you.
Right. And that's definitely a great segue to just the next kind of tidbit or question, which is just to build on that is, how are, let's say, attorney fees worked out? Is it I know, like when I went through it, I had a retainer, but then there's like an hourly that goes against it or something like that. I mean, is that pretty typical of how attorney-client relationships work?
Yes, usually. So usually in most divorces, you're going to have a retainer. The retainer is it's kind of like an advance, an upfront payment towards whatever the fees are going to be. Most attorneys bill at an hourly rate. It's usually between $250 and $350, and depending, Chicago firms and some other firms can charge more than that. But usually it's going to be an hourly rate in that range. And then as the attorney does the work, they're going to draw from that retainer that they put into an account set aside for their clients, and they'll draw from that retainer to pay for your monthly bill. You should get a statement every month, and it should show you what work has been done, how many hours were put in, how much that totals in the amount of a bill, and then what's left on your retainer. And then oftentimes as the retainer gets used up, if the case is still going on, the attorney will have you refill that retainer. Our office will do some creative things with our billing arrangements to allow people to continue. They may put in a lesser retainer, but then they'll pay every month a set amount to go into the account so that there's money there to cover the work to be done. If it's an uncontested divorce, and we consider an uncontested divorce to be a case where the parties have an agreement on all of the major issues in their divorce, and the case is only going to require 1 to 2 court appearances, we may charge a flat fee for that divorce depending on what's involved. And that flat fee usually encompasses everything. That's the flat charge, regardless of what happens in the case, whether it takes a little longer or it gets done a little shorter, you're going to pay that flat fee. But then if it becomes a contested matter, when I say contested, it means if there's more litigation that's needed, more court appearances, it will then convert into an hourly case because it's going to be more involved than initially thought. So we will have different arrangements like that depending what the client's needs are. Another thing that the clients should be aware of is that there's typically in every divorce case filing fees. Those are separate from the attorney's fees. Those are required by the court and by the court clerk's office to be paid for. And oftentimes we will bill those separately and have those paid separately because we have to pay those fees to the court to start the case and get it going. So those have to be paid by the client. So those are some of the examples of the fee arrangements that we offer and that you'll typically see in the divorce world.
Wow. Yeah, that is fantastic information right there. I mean, I don't know how many people I've talked to that are like, well, how does it work? How does it get paid? So appreciate you sharing that with everybody.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad it can be overwhelming sometimes, but I think it's very important that people feel comfortable enough to talk with their attorney openly about what is this going to cost. An attorney can't tell you exactly how much a divorce is going to cost you, especially if there are issues that have to be worked out, and it's going to depend on the amount of time that's involved and the amount of appearances you have to make in court. But an attorney should be able to give you an estimate, a general idea, a range as to what the divorce should cost you. And they should be able to talk with you, and you should be able to talk with them as the case goes on, how that range or that estimate is changing. Because it can, and not more often than not, it will change depending on how cooperative or how uncooperative the parties are. Have those discussions. Understand what the cost is going to be.
Absolutely. All right. Well, hey, that's going to conclude our first day of the interview. I want to have our listeners know that this is going to happen every day this week. We're going to have 5 separate interviews with 5 separate sets of questions here with Chris. And so make sure you join us tomorrow as we continue our discussion on the traditional divorce process and attorneys. Chris and I would like to thank you for joining us today on this session of Breaking Ties, the interview series. Should you have any questions for Chris, his information is going to be over in the description of the podcast. Feel free to reach out to him. He's happy to assist you any way he can. And remember, divorce is not the end of your story. It is the start of your next great chapter. And with that, we'll see you all tomorrow. Take care.
Take care.